In today's gaming industry, procedural generation tools are increasingly becoming the norm. But honestly, I haven't seen many developers as ambitious as Cloud Imperium Games. Now, other studios do use generation tools for vegetation and terrain, but not for generating entire planets with this level of detail. To put it into perspective, a single planet can be around 167,000 times larger than the entire map of Red Dead Redemption 2. That's an insane amount of space, and according to CRG, that scale is essential if you really want true exploration and meaningful base building. With their new Genesis technology, they are pushing things even further, turning these massive planets into living and visually diverse landscapes. I mean, just look at the footage in the background. It's hard not to be impressed. So let's take a closer look at what we actually know so far about this technology. Back in Star Citizen's early vision, the plan was to deliver 100 star systems. But planets weren't meant to be fully landable at first. You would basically land at a specific point of interest via in-engine cutscenes and not by piloting the ship yourself. Over time, CRG shifted direction. Fewer systems, but way more detail. And in December 2017, they hit a massive milestone. Fully explorable planetary surfaces, no loading screens, just seamless transition from space to ground when you land with your spaceship. That alone is insane technology, but CRG didn't want planets that are only technically impressive. They wanted them to look and feel alive. And that is what brings us to Genesis. Genesis is basically a new logic for building planets in a way that's way closer to how nature actually works. And to better simulate nature, CRG is using data maps. These data maps define the rules for biome generation. In their current planet tech, they already use maps like temperature and humidity. Now they are adding way more maps like geology, soil type, soil depth, nutrient quality, erosion, groundwater, and other environmental data that real ecosystems depend on. That's already an immense amount of data they can use. But now here's where Genesis gets really interesting. Every asset, a tree, a fern, a grass type, has a rule set that basically says, how much light do I need? How much water can I tolerate? How nutrient rich does the soil need to be? Can I grow on steep slopes? How do I react to erosion, temperature swings, exposure, and so on? And because different plants have different requirements and resources are limited, they start competing against each other. CRG basically built a form of natural selection for their own assets.
This automatically creates the cohesive environments that you saw in that clip. Not handcrafted anymore. No one has told those ferns and those pines to be like that. They each want to be like that. And that's what we're doing, multiple assets coming together to create a unique microbiome.
When it comes to generating geological data, CRG is using an erosion simulation tool. For example, it is helpful to find out where material would gather and where cliffs and valleys would form. The result from the simulation also influences other data maps such as groundwater, soil type, and of course, sunlight exposure. One example CRG explained is that areas with lower sunlight exposure have different vegetation. If a tree grows in the shadow of a mountain, it has to cope with less sunlight. Now I want to show you without any commentary the biome CRG has presented so far. Just keep in mind that these biomes are currently being used on only one planet as a testing ground for their planet type. And in the future we will probably see many more varied and much more alien looking biomes. But for now, enjoy! Now that we have covered the basics of planet generation, I want to discuss some additional features that help turn these planets into actual living worlds. The first feature is seasons. CRG has already told us that planets will show visual changes as the seasons pass by. For example, leaves changing color and the environment shifting slightly over time. Visually, it's a really nice addition. The next feature is creatures. Over the last year, Star Citizen has already started adding its first animals. We now have the Cobion, the Merc, the Space Cow, and even creatures like the Sandworm and a big snake-like creature. Together these creatures make planets feel far more alive, and CRG has already shown the direction they're heading in, stranger and more unfamiliar life forms. And I wouldn't be surprised if the next generation planets come with their own unique wildlife that players can hunt for loot. Then there's the weather and cloud system. If you have been watching the footage in the background, you have probably noticed how strongly the clouds influence the overall look of a planet. CRG has already implemented a dynamic system where volumetric clouds can form and dissipate naturally. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they continue refining the system even further. And when you look down at a planet from orbit, you can really see how those clouds combine with CRG's ground coloring technology to give these new planets a fantastic look even from space. That's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like and subscribe because there's definitely more to come, and I will see you in the next one.